Hello and welcome to Just Films and That. We're going to discuss a film that we feel is underrated, underappreciated, or we just wanted to talk about it. I'm Josh Hallam and I'm here as ever with Alice Oliver. Alice, how are you?
Very well, thank you, Josh. And yourself?
I'm okay. I'm a little bit warm because we're in a heat wave and I do have a bit of a cold, which those two things don't really go together, but that's how I am. We're joined today by another fantastic guest. He is a comedian, he's a podcaster, he's a writer. Aaron Simmonds, how are you?
Hello, mate. Yeah, I'm all right. Are you creating your own tornado in your own head? Is that what's going to happen?
Yeah,
hot and cold.
Maybe. I'm going to get like chilblains like people used to do in the 50s or whatever.
Great. I look forward to seeing it. Like, I know the listener to this is only going to be able to hear it, but I will do an audio description of what happens to Josh's head via sort of temperature over the course of this episode.
Very end of Raiders of the Lost Ark, I think it's going to sort of look like.
Cool.
But anyway, we always start with a completely random question, as you probably know. So we'll start with Alice. Alice, do you like cereal, breakfast cereal, I mean? And if so, what's the best cereal?
Josh, mate, I flipping love cereal. Now, I know I've gone on a lot about how much I love crisps, but then cereal is like my second thing. I flipping love cereal. I love all the cereals. If I had to pick a favorite, oh man, so hard. I was actually thinking about this the other day because I love things like, so you know, you get like Jordan's Country Crisp with the custards and the strawberry in it. My God, delicious. It's like £3 a box though, like come on. But then also Cocoa Pops. Absolutely love Cocoa Pops.
Classic.
But then love all the plain stuff like Weetabix and shredded wheat, All Bran. I mean, All Bran's a bit of an intense one. But like, I love a bit of All Bran. A bit of All Bran with a banana sliced on top. Ooh, lovely. If I had to pick a favourite, I'd go with the Jordan's Country Crisp, I think. If I had to pick one. It's quite decadent. It's really high in fat and high in sugar. It's really more like a pudding. Really.
I don't think I've ever had that. Is that like Special K or?
It's so much better than Special K. I mean, I love Special K as well, but it's just a much more dense Special K.
Jordan's Country Crisp.
Jordan's Country Crisp. How have you never had that?
I've seen it. I've seen it on the shelves.
Oh, honestly, get a box. If you like a bit of strawberry.
Treat myself.
They do a strawberry one. I think there's a blackcurrant one. There's a pecan nut one. Oh, yeah.
Are they sponsoring this episode?
Yeah. No, I promise.
What about you, Aaron? Do you like cereal? What's the best cereal?
So, full disclosure, at the minute, I can't eat dairy or gluten. Right. I'm very fun. No. But apart from that, yes, I bloody love cereal, and I take slight issue with Alice's suggestion of Cocoa Pops, and I've got just a slight qualm about it.
Oh,
go on.
Are you talking old Cocoa Pops before they changed the recipe, or are you talking about Cocoa Pops now since they changed the recipe, i.e., since they made it rubbish?
So obviously, it's never tasted as good as when I was, 6 years old, waking up in the morning, going to primary school, kind of trying to relive that magic. It's never quite happened. I didn't realize they'd changed the recipe.
Is that
because of the sugar tax?
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, Alice. I'm still furious about it.
No.
Before I was a comedian, I was a personal trainer, but I've got such a sweet tooth, and I've got such I was like 28 when they stopped making Ricicles. And I'll be honest, I'm still not over it. Like, I was a 28-year-old man who was in perfectly good condition. And I was very happy with my body. I'm very happy with my choices. And I was eating Ricicles twice a day. Kellogg's just made that decision that I wasn't allowed to do that anymore because kids want sugar. I don't care about the kids.
What about adults? What about me? Yeah. What about my Ricicles?
Put it on the top shelf next to the porn. I will go for the Ricicles in the porn. Thank you very much.
Yeah. The sugar tax thing has been devastating. I don't know if you've drank Ribena lately, but that is no way the same as it used to be. No way is it the same. Oh, it's so disappointing.
To give you an idea of how sweet my sweet tooth is, I once accidentally poured like a glass worth of undiluted Ribena, and I drank the whole thing.
Oh my God. Neat. No. You drank it neat.
I drank it neat, yeah. I was like, I think in my head, I'd seen like a cool guy in a movie could be like, give me a whiskey. And I was just sipping it and it was just Ribena. I mean, honestly, I don't think I stopped being hyperactive since that moment.
No, probably not.
I haven't slept. I haven't slept.
Yeah.
I just got images in my head of like you going to the shop and being like, so to 20 cigarettes, please, and a bottle of gin, and a pack of Ricicles off the top, please.
Yeah.
That's the perfect Saturday night.
Yeah. Actually, I don't need the cigarettes or the alcohol. Just give me the Ricicles. That's what I need.
So they're your favourite Ricicles?
Yeah, absolutely. But when they stopped putting them in shops, I did go onto Amazon to see how many boxes of Ricicles were still available to purchase. And I got like 6 or 7. And I was like, this will tide me over until they're restocked into the supermarket. It wasn't. They stopped making them. I'm still upset about it, guys.
That's heartbreaking, isn't it?
I
when
know.
your favourite thing stops getting made. Josh, what's yours?
Well, the exact same thing happened to me, but it wasn't Ricicles. It was Golden Grahams.
Oh, yeah.
So I used to love Golden Grahams, and I know they're full of sugar. And for some reason, they stopped making them. So I used to buy them off, like these. You get these like American sweet shops online where it's like 20 quid for a pack of like Mike and Ike's and stuff. So I got, so I used to buy it online. And then they made a brief comeback. And then someone in charge of all the supermarkets went, no. People don't want Golden Grahams. Tell you what everybody really wants. Cinnamon Grahams for some reason. And they're everywhere. They're in every supermarket. And I've never heard someone be like, I just love Cinnamon Grahams, mate. I love a cereal that burns the throat. Like
the other thing about it, the thing that upsets me most about cereal Grahams compared to Golden Grahams is it was alliterative, and they've gone, yeah, that's fine. Like, why were they were only called Grahams because they were golden?
That's
and
true.
They've gone, let's get rid of the gold thing. We'll keep the Graham because that makes sense for a cereal.
Yeah.
What should we call it? Cinnamon Grahams?
Just another Graham, isn't it?
Yeah.
What? Just another Graham. Grahams are interchangeable.
Unbelievable.
So we'll move on to talking about this week's film, which is Aaron has chosen 50/50, which is from 2011. So spoiler warnings if you've not seen it. So Aaron, you chose this one. So what's it about, and why did you pick it?
So the film is about this guy in his mid-20s. I think he's 25, and he doesn't drink, he doesn't smoke. The first thing you see him doing is jogging, and then he finds out that he's got cancer. Bummer. And he's given a diagnosis. Cancer is generally not a happy moment, but he's given survival rate of 50%, basically. And the film is all about how he's dealing with that news, but also his friends, his girlfriend, his parents, and it was when you asked me what film do I want to do, it was the first thing that came to my mind in terms of like, I could talk about that on that podcast. Yeah, that makes sense. That works, because the only other films that I really enjoy are superhero films, which I don't think you can claim Endgame is underappreciated or underrated. It's the best movie ever. We're not having this discussion. It's the best movie ever. But the only other movies that I like are terrible movies. And I really hate watching them. And, as much as I would love to talk about, Dwayne Johnson's Skyscraper for 40 minutes to an hour, I'm not sure how many people would want to listen to me talk about, The Rock pretending to be The Rock, but with one leg.
Oh, is it that one? I get the Dwayne Johnson ones mixed up. I was thinking of Rampage, I think.
It's, you know what?
I like Rampage.
I wouldn't be. You're not the only one who's done that. I think The Rock got confused at one point. They're almost identical. The Rock has one leg, and that's the only difference. The Rock has one leg in Skyscraper and has a big giant gorilla friend in Rampage. That's the only differentiating part of those movies.
I just shot them in between gym sessions. I don't know.
Yeah. I had to have a protein shake on set, but apart from that, it was absolutely fine.
So would you say you've picked this simply from a point of view of you want to talk about it, you like it, or do you think it's perhaps underseen, underrated?
Yeah, I think it's a cool movie. It was one of those things that I don't remember how I watched it. And I think that sort of indicates that it was probably underseen, or people weren't quite as aware of it as there could be of other films. So basically it's Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Seth Rogen, and Anna Kendrick, and I was like, I like all of those people. I'm going to download that movie. And I didn't really know much about it before I watched it, because I would say it's a drama with a bit of comedy in it, and I'm very much a comedy guy. I'm not here to, I don't think, I could have a good cry. I don't get people who want a good cry. This is just not my. It's not my bag. But I like Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I like Seth Rogen. I like Anna Kendrick, and I was like, I don't think I actually had heard of Anna Kendrick at this point. I think this is the reason why I like Anna Kendrick. But yeah, it's just a really, well-balanced, lovely film. And it just makes me feel good. Like, I've watched it sort of 4 times now, I would have thought. And every time I think, yeah, this is a bloody good movie, isn't it? Just a good movie. And that is what I believe is the premise of this podcast.
Yeah, pretty much spot on.
Nailed it.
Yeah. So, Alice, had you seen this one before?
I hadn't seen it, but it was one of those that every time I saw the thumbnail, like on Netflix or on various online streaming services, I was like, I need to watch that film. I reckon I'd like it. I'm a huge fan of Seth Rogen as an actor and just as a person. Really love Joseph Gordon-Levitt as well. And I knew it was about cancer. You can kind of tell that it's about cancer just from the thumbnail, because it's 50-50 and he's about to shave his head. And I think because the whole shaving the head thing is obviously that's quite a monumental step for so many people who do undergo chemotherapy. So that image is quite evocative, even though it's so simple. So I kind of got what it was about. So it's like, okay, it's these 2 comedy actors taking on a story about cancer. I was like, that's going to be interesting. But I absolutely loved it. I thought it was a brilliant film. I thought it was beautifully written. I thought the acting was superb. Joseph Gordon-Levitt gave such a wonderful performance and does this really good job at playing someone like, he was so good at looking like vacant so much of the time. Like, because so much of his experience of having cancer is having to kind of moderate the people around him. Like, his mum gets upset and his very short-term girlfriend gets upset. Obviously, his dad is suffering from Alzheimer's. And then you've got his best mate in Seth Rogen's character, who's kind of not quite sure how to handle it, but he is the most supportive person around him. So a lot of the time, he's trying to moderate that and just kind of get from day to day. And he just does such a good job at looking like a guy who's really struggling to hold it all together. And he has like this vacant look in him and it's kind of like mixed in with this sort of shock and horror at what's happening. But I thought it was brilliant. I did shed a few tears. I am one of these people who I don't mind like a bit of a cry. Like if I've gone like a few months without crying and it's been like, I'm having like a stressful time or I'm feeling particularly anxious or whatever, I do get to a point where I'm like, I need to cry. Like I need to let out some of this emotion and I can't just sit there and start crying. So it's like, if I find a sad film, certain that is a bit of a jerker, then it's quite cathartic for me. What about you, Josh? Had you seen this one?
Yeah, so I'd seen this one before. So I remember when I didn't go and see it in the cinema, but I remember when it came out because the whole marketing premise of the film when it was released was that the guy who wrote it is Adam. It is Adam, isn't it? Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character. I'm getting confused because I think the real guy's called Will, and I always get the 2 confused.
Yes,
but, the whole thing was the writer with Seth Rogen, Joseph Gordon-Levitt being like, it's a story about, me and I got cancer and it's 50-50 and see how it all plays out sort of thing. And it was sort of a quite darkly comic way of trying to market the film. So I first saw it. This film does stick in my memory because I watched it the first time I moved house into my first address with my partner now. So that thing when all your stuff's packed away and you're just sort of sitting there waiting to go to bed and you're like, God, we have to do something. So I just bought a DVD and I think this was one of those where back in the day it was just like at the front of HMV. And I think oh, that looks good, and I put it on, and I love, and I agree with you, Alice. Everything you've just said. I mean, I think it's a brilliant film. I think it's really good. What I quite like about it is that it's quite a realistic and naturalistic way of telling a really familiar story, and I quite like that it's an exploration of the human condition because it does it, like you say, by he's very vacant, and it's more about him. It's almost about him not dealing with it, but having to deal with everyone around him, and I quite like that, and down to things like the more naturalistic dialogue. Like it's from that era of films where it was obviously a case of there was a script, but there was also a we'll just keep saying stuff and see what comes out. And I quite like that. I think it gives it a really it's almost like a really unique take to have such a dark subject and a story that has been done many, many times, but never really quite been done like this. So what about you, Anne? Like, what is it you particularly like about it, or is it just an overall package? You just love it?
Yeah, I mean, that was sort of. I think you guys have hit pretty much what I like about it. Like, I think all of the performances are great. I think the mum. I'm terrible at actors' names, but the mum is fantastic in it.
Yeah, Angelica Houston. Yeah,
is that Morticia from Addams?
It is Morticia from Addams Family.
But like, even like the little characters, like his girlfriend, she does such a brilliant job of like being right on the edge of like, you can see why he's with her, but you can see why he needs to leave her. Like, that's such a difficult thing to play, and to get that sort of that balance right of where you're not going to go, well, of course you leave her, she's being a complete dick. Like, she absolutely nails that. Like, Seth Rogen, I thought, like, I like Seth Rogen, and like it was very much just after he was like everywhere doing like just all over, like Superbad and all of these
Knocked Up and
Knocked Up, and the really big loud Seth Rogen-y parts. To have him be there and to still be himself and be loud and be brash and all that kind of stuff, but actually have that heart behind it afterwards was really great. And like I just think the way they balanced the whole thing of it being about cancer, and it is a slight rom-com as well, and but to get that right is like, that happens. Like, I am not a big fan of boy meets girl, they kiss, end of movie. Like, I just don't like the heteronormative. Everything's fine when you find one girl and everything's sorted. Sorry, I was gonna do a really, really obvious plug for my show, but I'm gonna hold off until the end.
Okay.
If you want to hear more about how I'm not interested in heteronormative, come see my show. It's all about polyamory. Anyway, back to this. But no, I just think the way they did it was so like brilliantly done. Like they made it about those two people rather than, okay, we need to give them a reason to kiss at the end. Let's just get them to push their faces together. Like, it was actually earned, I felt.
I really like that, because it's quite interesting. Like you said, it's almost a realistic portrayal of what actually it is like, and it's not in any way. At no point does it sort of sell out and become cheesy, which I think a lot of when you think of this sort of film, quite often you do associate it with a certain emotional sort of baggage.
If you work hard enough, you can beat cancer. It doesn't take that. It's just, he was given 50-50 and the coin flip landed on his side.
But I'm interested to picking up what you were saying about his girlfriend character, the Bryce Dallas Howard character. I really enjoyed the way that it explored complex sort of emotions and stuff, and she, I think, is a really good example of that, because she essentially cheats on him, but she's not actually made out to be a big bad villain. It's almost like she's a flawed person. She's a flawed person who's under a lot of pressure, and she can't really cope with what is going on. And it's not, Seth Rogen is very antagonistic towards her, but even Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character he's not particularly like, there's no big like, get out sort of thing. There's just like a, oh, well, it is what it is sort of thing.
Yeah, get the fuck off my porch. Dead quietly.
I mean, they do it really well in terms of like making it seem like they've got problems before it.
Yeah.
Like, she doesn't want to be in that relationship anyway. And then he goes, I've got cancer, but you can leave if you want to. And you're like, no one wants to be in that position. Be like, I was going to break up with you anyway, but now, I think we should break up. It's not to do with the cancer. Of course you're gonna say yes, and then that pressure builds and builds and builds. It's again, she is not the person that you're rooting for him to be with in any way, shape, or form. But it's not a question of he has to prove himself to her or outdo her or make this big sort of gesture. Everything he does post breakup has got no relevance to her.
But like you say, it really explores those sort of almost real people. They feel like real people. They feel like real emotions. Like, and I do like the fact, as I've already said, that they don't sort of buckle under the pressure of it being cheesy. So, for example, at the end, he's going to go in for surgery, and it's very much like hopefully it'll help, but it might not. And they say their goodbyes, and that could have been a really melodramatic, emotionally sort of heart-wrenchingly, almost a bit manipulative scene. So, for example, you get the bit where he says to his dad, "I love you" and goodbye, but his dad's got Alzheimer's, and I feel like in the hands of a less skilled director and writer, his dad would have probably suddenly come to and said, "Oh, I love you too." And in fact, it's very much like, I don't know what you're talking about, because I'm unwell. So
but look at this jacket. Isn't it lovely?
Yeah.
No, and I thought that was really good, and like the way that they get Anna Kendrick to come in and sit on the other side and be like, "Oh, I'm one of the doctors," like that bit, and like even in that really sort of heavy moment, like Seth Rogen going, "Did he call me a dick?" Like, just to make that joke at that point, just so that it's not so heavy throughout the whole thing. Like, a lot of people would be like, "Oh, why don't you just let that emotional weight there?" But no, that's the whole point, is you need to release that so that when they come in and say whether or not he lives or dies, like, the surgery is successful, more accurately, you're not already at like breaking point, so that you've got one way or the other to go. The other thing that I would say is, when you say, "I think it feels real," I think that comes down to that guy's experience. Like, if you talk about what it was like that time you had cancer, it's much more real than going, "God, I wonder what it'd be like if I had cancer." Like, "Oh, that'd be so tough. Yeah, let me write about that." And like, you can tell that this guy's been through it. You can tell that he knows the experience of what he's writing about, and it comes through.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I couldn't agree more, because it's like, and it's also like you say, it's that perfect example of how almost in real life, when faced with these real sort of challenges, people do find stupid jokes in those moments, and it's an example of almost how comedy and tragedy go hand in hand so well. So, his best friend's being operated on, and he's talking to his therapist, like, "Did he say he was a dick?" And his mum is like, "I only smothered him because I love him." and straight away after that, the doctor, like you say, comes out to discuss the surgery, and she speaks to him before eventually telling him that he's still alive, and there's been some complications. And Seth Rogen just goes, "Well, you should start with that then."
Yeah.
And it's just a really beautifully sort of quite poignant but funny, but also, it's finding lightness in the dark, I guess.
As someone who has to make a joke anytime he mentions any kind of feelings, I totally get that. Like, I'm unable to explain, any kind of emotion or just anything without putting some kind of joke in it. Because,
classic British emotional repression.
Sure, needy comedian is another way of putting it, but either or is fine. But yeah, no, that's great.
So I want to, obviously, we touched a little bit on the performances, but I mean, until I saw this, I had never really seen Joseph Gordon-Levitt give like such a good performance. I'd always thought he was solid, but like he's amazing in this.
Yeah. And like, I think you touched on it earlier, the vacancy of it, and the fact that it's almost happening outside of him, and it's everybody else is dealing with it, is hitting him harder than him, and he's still in a bit of a denial throughout the whole thing. I think it's only when and a lot. So basically, when he's getting chemo, he meets a couple of other people with cancer, and they're obviously a little bit older than he is, and they're in a bit of denial as well. And one of them dies halfway through the film, and that's when it really sort of hits him that this is going to happen. And he's having therapy throughout the whole thing. He's not really engaging in it. He's just looking to sort of do the easy option of going, "Oh, can we do the breathing exercises, or can we not talk about my mum, or whatever it is?" And then once that hits, he then starts to feel it as well, and that's a really great turning point in the movie, I think.
Yeah, there's that moment, isn't there, where he has that sort of a little bit of a breakdown in the car, and I just remember that. I think that was the first time I was like, oof, like, and that's probably the one really dark moment in the film. And they use it so sparingly and so well that it really has, for me, like a full impact, because it's the only time you see him show such a volatile emotion. Because for the rest of it, like Alice said and you've said, he's very vacant and sort of quite stoic and still, and just sort of almost just getting on with it.
But that point, on the counter of that, how Anna Kendrick deals with that. So Anna Kendrick is his therapist throughout the whole thing, and is very young, very new to therapy, and is trying to be as professional as she can be, and is slipping up, because people who are young and new to jobs make mistakes in it. If you want proof of that, you could see my first 5 gigs. Awful business. Anyway, but yeah, so all the time she's trying to be as professional as she can be, and then when he has a bit of a freak out in the car, and Seth Rogen thinks he's calling his ex-girlfriend, but he's actually calling Anna Kendrick, and then he says, like, I want you to be my girlfriend, and you can see her smile and be like, girlfriends could be nice, and like it's like, yeah, like she's trying so hard, and like she's trying this to be professional whilst knowing this guy has surgery tomorrow, and fighting her own feelings of going, yes, I would really like that. It's just brilliantly done, I think.
I just really, really liked the film, and I think the relationship between, is it Kyle, Seth Rogen's character?
Yeah.
So the relationship between Kyle and Adam obviously really makes this film, and their chemistry together is lovely, and they just got such a good thing going on screen, and they complement each other so well. And it was just such a nice way to view this journey. Obviously, and to hear, when you've got the diagnosis of cancer at the age of, because he's in his like mid to late 20s, isn't he? And like you say, he's been so sort of safety conscious and health conscious about his life up until that point. That is just everybody's worst nightmare. And it just takes you on such an interesting journey of it. And it is such an interesting depiction. And just going off something you said before, Josh, it isn't trying to emotionally manipulate you. Or if it is, it does it very, very well and very, very subtly. But it's not these big sort of teary, dramatic, wailing moments, is it? It's all just these very subtle things. Like when they go to pick up girls at the bar, and then Adam's halfway through having sex with one of them, and he's just like, nah, you're gonna have to get off, it hurts my back. Like, it's not much of anything, it's just very real and very natural. The whole thing just felt like that.
Yeah Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I mean, like it's also a very real depiction of sex, which doesn't happen often in movies, which is like, oh no, this isn't full orgasm 24/7 every single day of the week. Like usually when it's sex, it's not what sex is like. So that was nice. Being like, oh, this isn't actually good for either of us.
My back hurts.
It doesn't make me in a good light. I have had sex with people who have enjoyed having sex with me. I just need to put that out there. Not all the sex I had was bad, but some of it.
So we'll move on to things that we perhaps would change or perhaps didn't like about the film. Is there anything for you, Alice? Is there anything that you particularly didn't like?
No, literally nothing. I enjoyed it from start to finish. It made me feel happy. It made me feel sad. It had a great soundtrack, great cast, great acting, great script. I really did. I just enjoyed it all. And I knew I was going to like it. Like, I am a bit, biased towards Seth Rogen, Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I knew that I was going to enjoy it anyway. And I just did. And I enjoyed every single aspect of it. I enjoyed the concept. And I don't think there is anything to change about it, really, at all. I don't think have we ever said that about any of the films we've done on this podcast?
Possibly a couple of the classics. Like I think the Great Dictator. I think we said we wouldn't change anything about that. I can't quite remember. What about you, Aaron? Is there anything that you've looked back and you think, actually no, or is it just no? It's great.
Yeah, I mean, it's nothing jumps out. I don't think of it as like a perfect movie. In my head, like a perfect movie is School of Rock, where you literally don't change a thing. You just watch it and then you watch it again because it's perfect.
Mate, I've seen that film maybe 15, 20 times. I went through such a phase with it.
perfect. It's just perfect. Mr. Schneebly. Anyway.
Actually, it's Schneebly.
But like, I think in terms of 50-50, I think there's nothing that jumps out. Like, there are a few bits and pieces that, you know, are not, would be like minor quibbles, but like the cleaning a car and that changing their dynamic completely. I thought that was like, okay, we need a reason for them to move forward, and for her to start calling him out and stuff. But that's a very, very minor gripe, just to prove that it's not perfect like School of Rock.
Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying there as well, because it's like, oh, you cleaned my car, so now this is how I feel about you now, and it's like, well, in reality, if that happened, it would just be like, oh, he's just got a bit of OCD. Like I would feel a bit uncomfortable sitting in someone's car that was that messy. And she was a little bit messy when he come into her office that first time as well, and her sort of sandwich was just on the side, and she just kind of left it there and that. So no, I totally get that point. So what about you, Josh? Was there anything that you didn't like or you maybe would change?
Nothing massive, like nothing like you both said, like little things that I might change. There was the odd bit of dialogue that Seth Rogen's character said, which was a little bit, you know, a little bit misogynistic, like a little bit talking about handjobs and blowjobs here and there. But I don't know if I'd change it, because I don't know if actually his character is compensating. Do you know what I mean? If his character is making up for how nervous he feels about his friend's condition. I don't know. What would you say?
Yeah, I would maybe agree. I'd forgotten that he was a little bit like that, because it's towards the end, isn't it? And they obviously make a big deal about the fact that they haven't had sex in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And it's like, is that a long time, really? Like, fucking hell.
Yeah.
Like, when you get into your 30s, especially, it's
wow, as someone
3 weeks.
Who's in 2 different relationships, I don't think I could last 3 weeks. But that's neither here nor there.
But no, there are bits of his dialogue that feel a little bit like they're actually from another film. Like they feel like they're from like a Seth Rogen comedy. It's a bit like, but for me, I don't know if it's just because I like the film so much. I just took it as he's overcompensating because he's nervous about the situation.
Yeah, I think there's definitely room to give him that. Like, I think it does sort of smack a little bit of like, or maybe we need to front load this with a bit of jokes of like that are not cancer related. You know, oh, you know what would be funny? Let's get Seth about sex and all that kind of stuff.
Something for the trailer. Something for the trailer, innit? It's like,
I do think though he says some of those jokes before the diagnosis, because it's within like the first couple of scenes, isn't it? Because he picks him up for work, and it's in that where he's like, oh, you know, we haven't had sex in 3 weeks. And it's like, oh, she had a yeast infection and then she had a period. It's like, well, she could give you a handjob or a blowjob or whatever. But it wasn't, I don't know, anything that comes out of Seth Rogen's mouth. Like, I don't find him offensive at all.
Lovable,
and I can't find anything that he says offensive.
Okay, so we'll move on to talking about the critical reception then. So, have either of you seen the critical reception for this? Do you know how it did critically?
No, I mean, I presume pretty well, because it's a great movie.
Yeah. Alice, how do you reckon it did?
I do reckon it did quite well, and I would mark it quite high. I think the writing is incredibly good. The story itself is brilliant. The acting is really good. And I don't think there's really many areas that you could fault it.
No.
So if I was going to hazard a guess, I would say kind of a generous 7. Like maybe kind of if we go 7.9, I just don't think it would maybe teeter quite into the 8s.
Okay.
With the critics, at least.
Okay, well, let's have a look then. So the IMDb at time of recording is 7.6 out of 10. And the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes.
That's a very good guess, Alice. I will give you that.
She always,
mate, my guesses are pretty bang on.
She always gets pretty close. However, the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes is 88%, and the critic score on Rotten Tomatoes is 93%.
Wow!
So that, I mean, it smashed it there, hasn't it?
Oh, I did not expect that one bit. Oh, wow. The critics finally came through. Finally.
So we have a thing on this, Aaron, which is whenever a film's done worse than we think it should, or it deserves better. we always look, what did the critics actually say? And most of the time, quite often, it's that it's just not another film.
Yeah.
We were watching one, was it the other week? And it was like, oh, it's not The Matrix though, is it? No.
Yeah.
It's not The Matrix.
Yeah. It's not trying to be The Matrix. It isn't The Matrix.
The only justification for that is saying it's not Endgame. And if that's the case, then yeah, that's the reason no other film could get a 10 out of 10. Because you can't have more than one thing that is 10 out of 10. If you got 10 out of 10, and let's say Endgame is 10 out of 10 because it is, you can't have other movies that are at 10 out of 10 because they're not Endgame. So that would be I'm with the critics on that one.
You're quite a fan of Endgame, are you, Aaron? Yeah, you're quite a fan of Endgame, Aaron, of getting that for...
I'm usually so subtle
getting those
with that.
vibes, you know. Yeah.
I mean, I've only got 8 Avengers posters in my flat. Actually, 9. I bought one recently. Yeah, no, a little bit obsessed, but you know, it's fine, right? I'm 31.
So back to the critical reception then. Is that fair? Is it high? Is it low? How do you feel now that you've heard those numbers, Aaron?
I think it's fair. Like I think it's a genuinely good movie, and like I think the point earlier where we were all like struggling to think of things that we didn't like about it, like it'd be easy to be like, yeah, it's a good movie, and but more importantly, it's a good movie, and like there's so little wrong with it, and it's got loads of good parts as well. It's not a nothing movie where just nothing happens, so you've got nothing to complain about. It's a great movie, and for it to get that score, I think it's absolutely fair. I spent a lot of time talking about how that isn't a nothing movie, but that was a really nothing answer, wasn't it? It's really good. It's a really good movie, and there's lots of good things. What an idiot. Anyway.
So what are we saying then, Alice and Aaron? Are we saying it's appropriately rated, but perhaps a little bit underseen? Like, feel like maybe more people should see this more naturalistic depiction of a story that we've seen before? What would you say?
I would say it is. I mean, it's definitely worth a watch, and I think maybe no matter what genre you prefer, I just think it's a really satisfying movie, and it just doesn't hit a bum note. And I definitely think it's appropriately rated, and I'm really, really impressed and shocked at those critic scores, because usually those kind of scores are reserved for the classics like Meet Me in St. Louis or like Vertigo, etc. Wait, I don't think we've had any
Endgame.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't think we've had any of the more modern films that have got that high. So that makes me really happy. And I'm really happy for everyone who was involved because of that.
Aaron, would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm delighted that I was able to recommend a movie that Alice enjoyed so much. It makes me feel smug.
And as for Endgame, my personal take is that it should be the only film that is allowed to be rated out of 3,000. So that way you can say,
"Oh,
you love it, 3,000."
Look at that!
There we go. It was worth it.
So there we go. Another one for the appropriately rated, underseen, definitely check it out pile, which is quite a niche pile, but definitely check out 50/50. So Aaron, thank you very much for coming on. So where can we see you? What's going on? Where can our audience look for you?
So I'm on all the usual places: Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Actually, that's all the places I'm on. I'm too old for TikTok, but it's at Rolling Comedian if you want to follow me on one of those. I'm doing my stand-up show all over the country at the minute. There are few dates booked in definitively. There's more to be added. So far, I have so the big one is at Soho Theatre on the 13th and 14th of August. But I have dates in Durham, in Oxford, in Faversham, I think I'm missing one as well, all over the place. Basically, whenever someone will pay me to tell jokes, I will be there. And as I said earlier, the show is all about, it's called Hot Wheels. It was about the time I got given a nickname after a one-night stand. And it's about the positive side of disability and polyamory and how they come together. They don't really come together that much, to be honest. I've never had
You found a way.
Well, I've had sex in disabled toilets, but I've never had sex with 2 people in disabled toilets. So, there's always next year. Now that we're back allowed to be outside, Who knows how many people I can have sex with in a disabled toilet?
Promises, promises.
Double vaxxed and ready to go.
So there we go, another episode in the bag, and safe to say, another fantastic film, another brilliant guest. Thank you very much to Aaron for coming on. Do check out all his stuff, because he's very funny on Twitter and Instagram, and make sure you get tickets for his show if you can, and just support him, because he was great for coming on the show. He's a great guy. We will be with you next week for another film. In the meantime, if you'd like to get in touch with us, it's filmsandthatpod@gmail.com, and we're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. It's just Films and That Pod. Until next week, Alice Oliver, thank you very much for joining me as ever.
Oh, thank you, Josh. Pleasure as always.
And it's goodbye from me. Cheerio.
Bye.